My name is Jim Cruz. I'm one of the pastors here at VBF, and on behalf of Jimmy and Lori's family and all of us here at VBF, thank you so much for coming to this celebration of life of a man that needs no words. Somebody just told me that he's been working on this pulpit for a while, and I noticed there's a little wobble in it. Not perfect, just like him, but it looks beautiful, doesn't it? He did a good job, and he was a beautiful man. I want to just kind of introduce this whole service to you, and we're going to have lots of different people coming up and sharing their thoughts and their memories of Jimmy and ways that he's impacted their life, and it's going to be a beautiful celebration of this legacy that this man left us. Some of you that have not been to a celebration of life service, this may be a little odd to you because you may not find a lot of sadness here today because Jimmy left such an amazing legacy of fun and excitement. I mean, this guy had life oozing out of him all the time. And we understand as believers in Jesus, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so Jimmy is more alive today than he ever has been, ever. And so that gives us an opportunity to come and celebrate this legacy because we know as believers this isn't a final farewell. It's just only a temporary departing because we're going to be reunited with Jimmy very, very soon. Now, I have to just say that I've never met anybody in my entire life that has chronicled their life on Facebook more than Jimmy Mack. Can I hear an amen to that? I mean, Lori, you don't even know this, but about 2 years ago, I go and visit my parents in California, and the first thing my dad tells me is, "Who is Jimmy Mack?" Our home church is in Bakersfield, and I've been watching Facebook over the last couple of weeks, and people from our home church in Bakersfield have felt a loss, and they haven't ever met him face to face. They feel as though they know him as a good friend just by the way he would get on Facebook and respond to everybody. And I think because of the celebration of life, it was only fitting that I read a post from Facebook that he did last Thanksgiving. He says, "I woke up at 4:45 this morning and heard Lori in the kitchen, realizing what time it was. I went back to sleep. I got up at 7:15. Got some coffee while she was wishing her mama a happy turkey day on the phone and sat at my desk. I thought about everything I'm thankful for. A great wife and kids, a grandson, home, a new truck, things that work around the house, music, food, an old dog that lays around the house, and I actually have to step over to get down the hall. I'm thankful for relatives both living and gone, the 2 pair of boots on the floor of my studio, the couples I'm honored to join in marriage, classmates and microphone stands. I'm thankful more than anything else that God sent his son, Jesus Christ, who gave it all and paid it all. I won't be here forever, and I know I'll one day be able to look at him in the eyes and thank him personally." And that, my friends, is what he's doing today. And I'm just so taken back by the way he would post and how a lot of us would just look forward to those Jimmy Mack posts. And you know, there were the godly posts, there were the witty posts, and then there were the sassy posts. Matter of fact, it was Jimmy that I first learned why it was that Texas would never fall into the Gulf of Mexico. And for those of you that need to understand this is I'm an Oklahoma fan, and Jimmy is a Texas Longhorns fan, and there's a rivalry there. And so because he's so Texas, every time the game would come around, he would remind me of how he despises Oklahoma. So one day he came up to me and he says, Jim, do you know why Texas will never fall into the Gulf of Mexico? And I should have known better, but I asked him why. He said, because Oklahoma sucks. I should have known better than to ask why. But despite it all, Facebook was a great platform for him, and he's befriended so many people, and he became your good friend. And I'm so glad you're here to celebrate his life with us today. For those of you that just have a story that you just want to get out and tell other people, and maybe even us today, we don't know how much time it's going to take for all of our prearranged speakers to come up and share their thoughts and memories. So there may be time at the end for you to share your story. But what I would like to encourage you to do is to go to Jimmy's Facebook page and chronicle your memory of your story with Jimmy that really stands out in your mind, whether it's a fun moment of him telling you his shark bite story, or perhaps a way that Jimmy impacted you spiritually. He had this way of leading people to Christ that just makes any pastor smile. And so, again, if we don't have time to allow you to tell your story today, please, at some point in the next 24 hours, go on his Facebook site and journal down that story that you have with Jimmy. And the family would greatly appreciate that. And we could let his Facebook site be that memorial for a great life lived, and we can keep those stories coming. But with that, I'm going to ask you guys two things. If you know somebody that is looking for the live stream of the service, and maybe they're even texting you and wondering like how they can find it. Unfortunately, the internet was not cooperating with us today, so we will not be able to live stream the service. However, we are going to be able to film it and chronicle the memorial service, the celebration of life service, so that those people that could not join us today, they're going to be able to watch it later on. There's two different videos being taken today. One will be posted on our own VBF YouTube channel. So you look up VBF Vegas or Vegas Church, and you'll probably, Marcus said by about 7 he can have that posted. The other video, there will be a link on Jimmy's page in a few days where you can go ahead and watch the service that way. But if you could go ahead and take a moment to silence your phone so we can give complete attention to all the different things that are going to be said today, we'd greatly appreciate. The less distractions, the better. But let me go ahead and pray, and Pastor Doug will be up here and share a few words himself. Father, we're so grateful for allowing you to know such an incredible human being like Jimmy Mack. God, I am especially grateful as one of his pastors to not only call him one of our church members, but to call him a personal friend. Somebody that could just inspire me and correct me and encourage me and sass me and just me love every moment of it. So, Lord, today as we have this celebration of life, God, I pray that you would cause us all to remember those moments that we had with Jimmy that would make us all smile, that would make his legacy even bigger and brighter than it already was. I pray, Lord, that you would anoint all of the people that are going to be speaking today, and that we could honor him the way, Lord, that would bring glory to you and just bring honor to Jimmy Mack. Lord, and I don't even know if this is possible, but I'm going to pray it anyway, God. If there's some way to just kind of to take the veil back from heaven and to allow Jimmy to be able to just peek down and see this beautiful service and how many friends and family came to pay tribute to his life, God, I pray that you would allow him to do that and to hear the stories and to be a part of this tribute to his life. And God, I thank you in advance for how you're going to just do amazing things through this service. The last thing I want to pray, God, is your grace and your peace and your comfort to be given to Lori, to be given to other family members, God, to be given to the close friends that right now, God, are hurting. 2 weeks ago, this was the last thing that crossed our mind that we would be doing here on this Saturday. So I pray that peace and that comfort and that grace to be given to every single person that is hurting in this sudden departure of Jimmy Mack. And we thank you, God, for how you're going to accomplish that. And we pray this in Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen.
Well, as Pastor Jim said, I'm Pastor Doug, one of the pastors here at Valley Bible. Jimmy Mack, what a character. When I think of Jimmy, I think of part MacGyver, part Honey Boo Boo. I mean, he was redneck at his core, but then the guy could be so sophisticated and like, man, where did you learn that? Where did you know that? I mean, since the time that I've known him, I knew he was a law enforcement officer. He was a plumbing superintendent. He was a musician. He was a wedding minister. He was a retirement home pastor. And he just started a custom furniture business. I mean, that guy is sophisticated. We know Jimmy. If you know him at all, you know he was famous for his stories. And my wife told me that she came to church and Jimmy pulled her aside, hey, I want to tell you what happened here today. And Lori was by his side. And he goes on to tell this story about a lady at McDonald's that had been kicked out of her house and needed some money. And Jimmy gave some money and prayed with her. And she said, oh, this has to be God. And my wife was almost in tears. And Jimmy went on and walked by, and Lori walked by and said, not a bit of that's true. Not one bit of that story is true. He's a character. Yet, he had one of the most tenderest hearts I've ever seen. He would come in and tell me that they'd lost another resident up at Heritage Springs, and he would cry. He would just literally cry in my office and tell me about his relationship with this person. He was just a very unique man. And Jimmy's faith flourished when he got to Valley Bible, he told me. He shared that Valley Bible was a good fit for him. Our church is, I kind of describe our church like a story in the Bible. King David was this famous king of David and Goliath fame, but he started off really small, and he was on the run, and nobody wanted him, and he was alone in a cave. And it says there that the people heard about him and were drawn to him, but it said the people that were drawn to him were the discontented, the distressed, and those in debt. And that was David's army. That was his mighty men, 450 people. And I think of our church like that, because most of us pastors, we didn't grow up in church, and we were on the wrong side of the tracks for a good portion of our life, and we became Christians, and we seemed to kind of draw folks like that. And I think Jimmy saw that, and it was appealing to him. His death, the phone call I received from Lori, in all my years of doing this, it is in the top 2 or 3 of shocking. I never saw this coming, as most of us. I mean, it was just shocking. I mean, he was full of life, and he was Jimmy Mack, and there was no warning lights on that had any of us worrying. And when this type of death happens, I know I had questions, all kinds of questions going through my mind. Why this, and what this, and could we have done this, and all those things. And those are questions. But I tell you, one thing that I did not question is where Jimmy Mack is now. I know he's in heaven with God. I know that from the bottom of my heart. And you say, why do you know that? Well, let me tell you a story that kind of will illustrate why I know that. In World War II, a man lost his life in a fight in Paris, and his 2 buddies wanted to give him a proper burial, and they walked a half mile to a Catholic church and knocked on the door, and they asked the priest, can we bury our friend? And the priest asked, was he Catholic? And he said, no, he was Methodist. He said, well, you can bury him, but you can't bury him inside the fence. You'll have to bury him outside the fence. And so they did that. They buried him. And they went on their way. Well, about a month later, they were passing by that church again. They wanted to go pay the respects to the graveside of their friend. And so they looked for his grave, and they couldn't find it. Walked all the way around, could not find that grave. And so they went and knocked on the door of the church. And the priest answered, and they said, hey, our friend, we were here last month. He's not here. And the priest said, when you left, he says, I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I said, I felt so bad for not letting your friend inside the fence. So what I did is I moved the fence. He's on the inside now. And I thought about that, and I'm reminded of a verse that the Bible talks of. It says, but now in Christ Jesus, you who were formerly far off have been brought near by the blood of Jesus Christ. What that verse means to me is that because Jesus died for Jimmy's sins and my sins and your sins, that we can come inside the fence. Now, I don't know, as Pastor Jim said, if you can see down from heaven to earth. I don't know that. But if Jimmy is watching, I think he would say something like this after that story I just told you and Jimmy's relationship with Christ and his love for you. If Jimmy is up there watching, I can almost hear him saying to those of you maybe that aren't inside the fence, what are you waiting for, dummy? Come inside. What a man. Well, we could, Pastor Jim and I and a few others, we could talk forever about Jimmy, but since this is a celebration of life, it's a memorial service. We're going to have some folks share up here, share their thoughts and share their memories, and we're going to honor the life of Jim McNamara. And we want to start off with the person that every time he was around, he was constantly saying, boy, I married up, and God sure blessed me with Lori. And so, Lori, would you come up with your family? Come on up.
Wow. Those of you that know me and Jimmy, you know that I was not the talker. He was, so this is going to be hard for me. But a couple weeks ago, when we were at a service, when we left, he said, you know, when I leave, it's not going to be very many people coming to my service. And I wish he could see all this now. He loved you all, and I know you know that. I just want to tell a little story. We're all up here because I'm chicken, and I needed support of my family just to share some things. But one of the things I want to tell you about is how we met and what Ephesians 3:20 meant to us. We always talked about our 3:20 moments, and it's on the card if you guys got the card walking in. But when I first met Jimmy, he was doing an open mic at a outdoor restaurant. And he asked if anyone wanted to come up and sing, and I raised my hand, and I would never do that because, like I said, I'm not one to get up and do things, but I did, and I know that was God, and I got up, and he was, I did not like him. He was really rude to me, and I thought bad thoughts, and I finally did sing a song. It wasn't good, and I redeemed myself a couple weeks later with him, and actually we sang Amazing Grace together then, and I didn't see him for another year. And didn't think of him. I didn't like him. In fact, I was seeing somebody and he was with somebody else, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, then a friend of ours, actually a mutual friend, Phil Larimore, got an email from him about him putting together a band. They were doing a video, and he said to his wife, Janie, why don't you take Lori? You know, I'm not doing anything. So she ended up not going with me, but I went, and I had emailed him, and I thought, well, now I've got to go because I emailed him and told him I'd be there. And that was actually the start of our relationship. He asked for my phone number, and that was like in October. He proposed in December, and we married in March. But before all this happened, here's the story about 320, and it was right before I saw him the second time. I had this list to God, if you ever give me a husband, if you ever bless me with somebody else, this is what I want in a husband. And I want somebody that's a Christian. I want somebody funny. I want somebody that's a musician. And I had some other things listed down too. Let me look at them. I wanted a handyman. I did. And I wanted somebody older because I didn't want little kids running around the house. So I got somebody older. But as time went on in our relationship, I realized that God had given me more than what I asked for on the list. I mean, he was funny, but Jimmy brought life into a room that he walked in. He wasn't just funny, and he was a musician, but we got to do things together and sing together and play together, and he loved my kids just like his own. So
was Goofy on that list?
And Goofy, no, he didn't say that, but Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now unto him who is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think," and that's the God we serve. And Jimmy and I would say that all the time when something would happen. This is our 320 moment. Look what God did. This is a 320 moment. And that's why we got married actually on 320, March 20th. And I picked that day out before he even proposed. I already knew that was the day we were going to get married because I knew he was going to propose. I knew this was a man for me. But that's a little bit of our story and how we met. And I'll pass the mic on to Jess. This is my daughter, Jess. Oh, Josh, go ahead. Josh and Josh. Isn't this cool? Josh is my son. And well, Josh,
I'm drinking water. You go ahead.
Yeah. Go for it.
All right, I guess I'm going. There's not much. I mean, I knew Jimmy for a good chunk of my life, actually. He kind of stepped in as the real father figure after, like, everything had happened. Mom, my other dad separated, and it's kind of nice having him there. He fit right in. He was just as weird as the rest of us. He kind of brought back, I used to listen to really crappy music, and he kind of gave me that country music thing again, and that's what I really focus on now. I love country music. And
he made me hate country.
He made you hate it? Yeah, no, he made me, okay. Originally, I hated it too because he always had that Brazos River Band thing going on. It was annoying listening to it in the living room daily. It was
Amen to that.
But after a while, it kind of, actually after the band shut down, I started listening to country music again. It was just weird. And I mean, it came down to the fact where, like, I was hitting 15 and a half, 16 years old, and I wanted to get a motorcycle, mainly because Jimmy had a motorcycle. Mom never would have let that happen. She was absolutely against the motorcycle idea, and Jimmy was the one who talked her into it, and then he set me up with the course. He got me everything I needed, and then I came home one day and walked in the garage door, and I look into the little center area right there, and there's sitting a 2007 Honda Rebel 250.
With lights flashing.
Absolutely gorgeous, and I was like, that's amazing. And I'm pretty sure I cried that day when I saw that bike.
Yes, you did. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we took it out. He taught me how to ride pretty much, and ever since then I've been riding. I ended up getting my dream bike a little while back, which was the V-Star 650, the exact same bike that he had, and then I crashed it. Yeah, and I just remember coming home another time, and we had originally gone to Yamaha and looked at a bike, and I fell in love with this Suzuki Intruder. And I kind of looked at him like, I really want this bike, but I'm broke. And I come home one day, and it's sitting in the garage. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. There was that, and then, I mean, even me and Jess both were absolute gun nuts now. Her more than me. She's Little Miss Camo and whatnot. I mean, she got the cargo pants going on right now, and tactical or whatever it is. Now, I love my guns, but Jimmy's the one who got both of us into that, and even Mom into it. And I mean, he stepped up, and he pretty much just put the family together and just made it amazing. And I mean, there's not a day I don't miss him. And I remember getting the call, and I just kind of went into shock. And we got in the car, and fiance drove me down to the house, and got there, and that was hard.
And I want to point out, my dad was terrified of motorcycles before that.
See, I didn't know that one. I knew he used to ride with the Force, and he kept telling me a story about when he dropped his bike in front of everybody at the ceremony. I laughed on that one.
Yeah, I heard about that. He was kind of sheepish to tell me about it because my dad and I simultaneously were going through a rough patch in our lives, and I wanted to get a bike. You know, I've never been one for vices, but I wanted to ride. I wanted to learn. And so I got one. And my dad was asking me all kinds of questions about it. You know, is it dangerous? Are you nervous? This and that. And I told him, I said, if you can ride a bicycle and work a manual transmission and know how to manage dumb people, then you can ride a bike. He didn't know how to manage dumb people all that well. But I told him, you know, because both of our hearts were real heavy at that time. And I told him, I said, you know, riding is a lot better than drinking. or anything else that you can do to help you get through something, it's an awesome thing. And 2 weeks later, he's got a bike, he's got leather chaps, he's got a jacket, he's got gloves, he's got a bell, he's got chrome accessories that I didn't even know existed. I mean, he totally one-upped me, which was not uncommon for him. And next thing I knew, he was a rider. And we never got the chance to ride today, and I'm so glad that you made the suggestion for us to do that ride, because we finally got to do it. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm here representing the Minnesota family, Lori's family. So I think for me, just watching Jimmy Mack at the beginning brought back kind of what I wanted to say today, is that he brought so much joy to everyone that he met. And that made me feel really good, just watching my mother-in-law and my kids and my nieces and my nephews and all of our extended family, how they would light up and just love to tell their own Jimmy Mack stories. So it was, the kids helped me pick out a poem to read to Jimmy Mack, and it's called My First Christmas in Heaven. I see the countless Christmas trees around the world below, with tiny lights like heaven's little stars, reflecting on the snow. The sight is so spectacular, please wipe away that tear, for I am spending Christmas with Jesus Christ this year. I hear the many Christmas songs that people hold so dear. The sounds of music can't compare with the Christmas choir in heaven. I have no words to tell you the joy their voices bring, for it's beyond description to hear the angels sing. I know how much you miss me. I see the pain inside your heart. But I'm not so far away. We really aren't apart. So be happy for me, dear ones. You know I hold you dear. I'll be glad I'm spending Christmas with Jesus Christ this year. I sent you each a special gift from my heavenly home above. I sent you each a memory of my undying love. After all, love is the gift most precious than pure gold. It was always most important in the stories Jesus told. Please love and keep each other as my Father said to do, for I can't count the blessings or love he has for each one of you. So have a Merry Christmas and wipe away that tear. Remember, I am spending Christmas with Jesus Christ this year.
Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you.
Hey, Jot.
Jess?
She's got notes.
Well, I just made bullet points of what I wanted to talk about. I figured I would just mention some of the funny stuff him and I shared together that he would not want me to tell you all, but he's not here to tell me no, so is that better? Okay. First of all, yeah, the reason why I'm wearing these tactical pants today and look like I'm going to go shooting is just in honor of him. You know, he was the one who got me into guns and stuff like that, and he was so proud of me on my 21st birthday. He's like, you know, my pistol packing daughter and stuff like that. I didn't want to go out drinking. I just wanted to go shooting on my 21st. And
You have to know, when he first took her shooting, she cried, holding the gun, cried. And now she's like Rambo girl.
Yeah, I made him hold on to my arms so he could teach me how to shoot, because I'm like, don't let go, I don't want it to hit me. But and now if you could only see me running around with rifles and shotguns and all that fun stuff. Another funny story him and I shared was he always had this hair on the top of his nose, and I told him I didn't want him to look like an old man, so I would pluck it off of his nose. And he would yell at me, and he hated me for it, and I don't think he wanted y'all to know, but I had to make sure he looked good. Another one, I think I was at work one time, this was back in high school, and I needed my family to go get me some feminine products. So I'm sure you saw the picture on the slideshow, and Jimmy, Mom, and Josh all went to the store, and they took a picture and posted it on Facebook of... He made every event.
It was a big event, yeah. We have to get
I'm so glad I wasn't there for that.
Yeah. He was always like that in the stores. You guys saw, whenever we would go shopping, there was always something. He'd yell something, "Oh, did you get your hemorrhoid cream, honey?" And he'd yell it across the store at me. It was always a treat with him. Embarrassing.
Oh yeah, another story. They didn't even know this till I told them this week. It was just me and Jimmy home alone, and I needed to buy a new stick of deodorant, and I didn't know if the one I had smelled good or not. So I walked over to Jimmy. I'm like, Jimmy, can you smell my armpits for me? He said, okay, but don't tell anyone. So now y'all know. Oh gosh. I think earlier this year at work, I slammed my thumb into the door and had a big bloody accident. And I called Jimmy. I'm like, can you come pick me up? I got to go to Quick Care and get some stitches or something. And I remember my boss told me, you know, keep your thumb elevated. And I was just sitting there. I was so tired. It hurt. And I'm like, Jimmy, can you hold my arm up for me, please? So we sat there, and he held my arm up like this for me the whole time. And
she didn't call her mom.
No.
The only person she called when she got her was Jimmy, because she knew Jimmy would baby her, buy her a car, whatever she needed. She just fuck it up.
No, I bought my own car.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You could have done
Lori,
it.
you've got to let that go.
I know.
I just want to mention something real quick. If anybody notices her little accent,
What?
her little Minnesota accent, Jimmy used to give her crap for that all the time. She's not from Minnesota. The family's from Minnesota. She thinks she's from Minnesota. She's got this like boat thing going on, and he's
Yeah, sure, you betcha, don't you know?
exactly. See, we have it.
Don't you know?
Yep. But yeah, anytime I wasn't feeling good, we had this running thing going. If one of us wasn't feeling good, we get each other a sock monkey. So I know he got me one the first time, then I got him one the second time when he wasn't feeling good. Our little thing back and forth. Mom actually found the sock monkey I gave him, so I got to keep that. Another thing he did for me, I didn't remember this till you told me. Back when Mom wanted to marry Jimmy, I said, yeah, I'm okay with that, but I didn't like that he smoked. So him and I sat down, and he told me, he's like, you know, I quit smoking for you. I thought that was really sweet.
And he did. I remember him telling me that it was really important to him to quit smoking for her, because he knew how important it was. And he did. He came to Pastor Doug probably a month before we got married, and Doug prayed with him, and he never smoked again. And he did it for her. That's how much he loved her.
Yeah.
And we got to tell the spider story. I have to share this one too, because Jimmy and I, probably for the last year and a half, we had this little spider that we'd hide on each other around the house, always. I'd hide it, he'd find it and jump, and then he'd hide it on me, and that was just what we did. He got me good one time, put it in my hair, hung it from my toothbrush. I mean, a year and a half, this spider has been floating around the house. But he would always love to get Jess, because she hated bugs. So you share that story, because that was funny when we first.
Which one?
Well, I think, Josh, you were part of that too.
Yeah,
this
you want to
Josh.
share the story? You know better than I do.
All right, so on this spider thing, me and Jimmy, as she was saying, Jimmy's a handyman. I'm a bit of a handyman as well. So we were playing around with an idea of having the spider run up the wall when she opened a door. So we rigged this little like tarantula-looking plastic spider with some fishing line, and we ran it onto the shower curtain and over the shower head, so that when she pulled the curtain open, it would run up the wall. I remember standing in the kitchen just hearing her scream.
I really wish I was there for that.
It was amazing, truly.
You remember, you know those little scratch things you put on your head? And I always warned Jimmy never to scare me, because whatever is in distance, I will slap. And he didn't believe me.
She did.
And I slapped the crap out of him. He learned his lesson the hard way. But I'll finish with this. I figured I had a hard time Thursday, or the following Thursday, remembering the last time I saw Jimmy. I knew it was on Tuesday, because I would always come home for lunch. And he'd made chili that day for me, and I was kind of mean. I said, Jimmy, I don't like your chili. It doesn't taste good. I still ate it, but, and we talked and stuff like that, and I remember I had to rush to go to work, and I couldn't remember the last things I said, and I was so worried. I was like, did I tell him I loved him? Goodbye? And
Let me finish. Yeah, she didn't remember, and I remember him calling me that day. He says, Jess was over the house, and she ate the chili, and she didn't like it, and she told me that. But I walked her out to the car, and she gave me a hug, and she told me she loved me. So he did.
To add to the list of incredibly embarrassing things for my dad, and which, by the way, we cynically take so much pleasure in doing this. Nobody has or can embarrass me the way that he did, so I love this opportunity. My dad had the worst gas than any other human being. If you haven't had to experience it, you are so lucky. He'd bring tears to your eyes. You'd leave the room. No, you don't. You're good. I didn't eat breakfast, so. I'm serious. It was terrible. Thank you. All right, I can get through this without crying, but I've really got to pee, so I hope I can get through that. Yeah, I'm my dad's son. So I had this really great joke that I was going to start off with, and my grandmother kind of ruined it by getting herself rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, though, I've got something better to say than a good joke, and that's the fact that she's going to be okay. Thank you. We were really worried about her. She hit critical at one point, but it looks like now our biggest concern is figuring out how to deal with her for another, hopefully, 20 years. So we want to thank each and every one of you for attending my dad's celebration today. People are joining us from all over the country and the world for this, and that's awesome. I was concerned that I might be nervous coming up here, but just knowing that I'm in a room full of people that love my dad as much as I do, it's really helped out a lot, and I think it's helped out the family tremendously. It means more to this family than I think we can find the words for. We also want to thank the church for allowing us to be here today and everything that they've done. But I want to begin this by saying a very special and heartfelt thank you to Lori. I know that I'm supposed to be here looking out for you while I'm here, but I'm going to have to make you cry for a minute. I was at O'Hare Airport in Chicago on Thursday when I got the call from my Uncle Steve, and he told me what happened. After we got off the phone, I called my son Braden and told him what happened, and also to let him know that I didn't think I'd be able to get him these next 2 weekends, and he understood. After we hung up, the reality began to set in, so I found a little corner in the airport and cried like a baby. When I felt like I had gotten it out of my system, I took a deep breath and told my dad, "Go find Mama and give her a big hug and a kiss for me. I'll look after Lori." Lori, you and I have spent more time together in the past week and a half than we have since you and my dad have been together. I am not only thankful to have gotten to be able to spend this time with you, but I wish we had gotten started on it sooner. You are a wonderful person. Your heart, your spirit, your faith, your backseat driver abilities are very questionable. But most of all, just being who you were for and to my dad, you were undoubtedly a huge part in helping him to become such a great man. So many people have been telling me how my dad has helped save their lives in some way, but I think everyone here deserves to know that you helped to save his. In one of our very first conversations, you asked me to call you Mom. My mom had just recently passed away when you did, and my heart just wasn't ready for that. But it is today. I can do this. If I could ever be so lucky someday to find a woman who is even half of who you are, I imagine she's probably going to be calling you a lot, because my dad and I are really not that far off from each other. I know that you've been frustrated with me for taking longer than you wanted on some of the little things that you've asked me to do around the house, stopping up your toilet 5 times. And what's ironic is my dad was in plumbing for 30 years, and I managed to show up for a week and stop it all up. Thanks, Dad. All of my running around, but there's something about all of my running around that you don't know about. And let me just say that I am glad that I didn't have to grow up with you, because it's really been a challenge trying to do stuff behind your back. She asked a lot of questions. Many of you have seen me on Facebook crossing things off the list of things that I wanted my dad and I to do on our visit this weekend, but the majority of that time was spent trying to do something else, specifically for you. Which reminds me, do the tourists in this town understand that stop signs don't turn green and red lights kind of work the same way no matter where you're at? I'm trying. I talked and went to I don't know how many different merchants before I finally found someone who was, one, willing to deal with me being so demanding on such a tight time constraint, and two, who actually had the item on hand and could pull off what I wanted to have done. I got turned down by at least a half dozen places before I finally got what I was after. I would tell you guys who they are, but they didn't offer me any kind of paid endorsement, so we're just going to call them awesome. So Doug, if you will, in true McNamara fashion, Lori, I want to present you with the very first ever Wife of a Lifetime Achievement Award. You have certainly earned this for not only putting up with my dad, but also for all of the hard work that you have put into helping God transform him into becoming a man of God who learned to serve a purpose that was greater than his own. For those of you who can't see it, it reads, dedicated to a very loving, loyal, God-fearing, and clearly patient woman. Presented to Lori Fanning McNamara, the Wife of a Lifetime Achievement Award 2014. Lori, my family thanks you. I thank you. The people who love my dad thank you. My dad thanks you. And I think above all, God thanks you too. I not only think of you as mom, but I'm proud to call you that. I love you, Mom. Hey, I had to deal with him for 35 years. He can deal with me for 15 minutes. If you've ever had to share a kitchen, a garage, or a car, or even a box of ammo with my dad, you totally get why she deserves that. Over the past 10 days, my head has been spinning. To most of you, you knew him as Jimmy. To me, I knew him as Dad. However, he always managed to find a way, regardless of the circumstances or his audience, to throw a little Jimmy in there. Whether he was playing the role of dad, preacher, friend, husband, son, brother, or being the guy who pulled into the drive-thru at McDonald's and told them, "This is my first time here," which was incredibly embarrassing and awesome all at the same time. No matter what, he always managed to work his very dynamic personality in and brighten someone's day. That was one of my favorite things. That was one of my favorite things about him. He was far from being perfect, but he was always genuine and his heart was pure. The dad I knew wanted the best for me, and he would give up whatever he had to help make that happen. Even when he was a shattered mess, he still knew and always remembered how to put on his shield to hide those broken pieces and be the strong example that I needed to help me get through whatever life questions I was trying to find the answers to. I could stand up here for hours and tell you guys about the things he taught me in my life. I have so many stories that make you laugh, cry, roll your eyes, and shake your head. But more importantly, to help you appreciate what a wonderful person he grew up to become. As it turns out, he became so much more than I could have ever imagined. My dad and I always maintained a very close relationship. As I got older and my perspective on life began to change, that had an impact on our relationship. Times got tough between us and we weren't rounds with each other, but no matter what we went through, we never left each other in the ring. We went back to our corners when we needed to walk it off, but we hung in there until we found our common ground. By my definition, that's unconditional love. Over the last several days, it has honestly been my honor being able to be a part of so many similar stories, pictures, and videos of watching him share that same part of his heart that I have always valued so much. There's one story in particular that has really stuck with me, and I want to share it with you. A man came by the house the other day to pay his respects, and before he left, he came over to tell me a story. He said that my dad was ministering to a group of men who were suicidal. I had no idea that my dad was even a part of this group. He told me that he had reached a point in his life where he felt like he was living in a world full of strangers who couldn't care whether he lived or died, and after time, he began to agree with them. This story really hit home with me because there are days where I feel the exact same way, surrounded by a world that just doesn't care whether I'm here or not. He said that when he met my dad, another stranger, my dad showed him through that same unconditional love he had that there is also a group of strangers out there who do care about him being here, and there is a God that does too. My dad believed in the power of love and faith and what it meant to be good to people and how that could impact them so much that he was able to convince this man with a genuine heart that his life was worth living. As he's telling me this, he lifted his arm and introduced me to his 6-week-old son he was holding and told me that he had my dad to thank for that. I was overwhelmed, my heart smiled, tears running down my face, and I just couldn't help myself. I reached over and gave that beautiful black-haired, diaper-filling kid a kiss on the head, and I hugged his daddy like he was my own blood. I walked away from that conversation with a pride and appreciation for my father that I had never felt before, and that feeling continues to grow stronger with every conversation, comment, post, and video I come across. My mom died a little over 5 years ago. As always, my dad was right there by my side. She was diagnosed with cancer, and from that moment on, I sat there and helplessly watched her die. She was a lot like my dad in the sense of not only understanding unconditional love, but demonstrating it with every person she met. She was as equally awesome and just as obnoxious as my dad, although she never did anything to deserve the suffering that she endured. I held her hand until the final moment and watched her fight to try and hold on before I finally begged her to just let go. When she did, my hurt and anger slowly grew into a hate for God. I pushed everyone away from me, including my dad and myself. So much so to the point that I not only learned what it meant to truly feel alone, but I became alone. When I heard that my dad died, I prepared myself for that same sensation to grow even stronger. But then I came out here and began meeting all of you. When I lost my mom, I lost God. And later, ironically, my dad found God. As I listened to that man tell me his story while he held his son, reading all of your comments and experiences you all have had with my dad, standing here in front of you today for the first time in over 5 years, and from the loss of my dad, I am finding God again, and I don't feel so alone. Thank you. I really wish my dad was here to see me realize this, because he really struggled to help me find my way back. And that really blows me away, because God was honestly the last thing that was on my mind when I flew out here. There were only 2 things that were on my mind when I got the news, and that was hoping that my dad didn't have to suffer and making sure that Lori was okay. I couldn't really process anything else. My dad was a lot of things. To name a few, he was intelligent, talented, driven, diligent, hardworking, committed, funny, sarcastic, obnoxious, narcissistic, and I could go on. But he also had a lot of depth that many people didn't get to see, or so I thought. The most valuable thing he is teaching me right now is stewardship. By layman's definition, stewardship is selflessly developing those around you to become successful in whatever they are doing or whatever they are challenged with. Investing that extra time to help make a difference in someone else's life for no one's benefit but their own. I do this a lot within my career because it's not only a part of my job, but it's also part of my heart. I love watching people become successful and playing a role in their success. I try to do that when and where I can, but when I measure my contributions to that of my parents, I see that there are a lot of opportunities I am missing out on for whatever excuse I can come up with. I think we are all guilty of that to some degree. My dad wasn't perfect. He wasn't great because he was born that way. He was just a guy that never gave up, and he refused to live without serving some sort of a purpose. It just took him a while to find it. Who knew that purpose would ever become the purpose of God? I didn't. My family didn't. Quite frankly, we were shocked, but yet fully supportive when he turned his life over to God. His life changed, and he was no longer afraid of what was in his heart. In my eyes, that's a tough thing to do, and it requires an incredible amount of courage to be able to stand there in front of your past and become that guy. I love him for that, and I will always respect him for it. I believe that a man who has no regrets is a man who lacks conviction. But a man who has conviction has the power to change the world they live in by the selfless contributions that he makes to it. My dad made that change not only in his own life, but in so many others as well. In my heart, that's what makes a person great. Taking the risk of subjecting yourself to the threat of being hurt by spreading unconditional love and having the faith to do it anyway. There is no greater courage. Life gives us wounds and we learn to heal. Pain teaches us to love deeper, and forgiveness makes us become stronger. But faith and unconditional love can fill up a room full of strangers and has the power to turn them into a family. I have a lot of years behind me, and I hope to have at least just as many ahead of me. But throughout my time thus far, I haven't found anything that is more awesome than watching strangers become family. I'm almost done, Lord. Oh. Did you tell the guy in the motorcycle ride for me to turn right? Okay, because everybody else went straight and I went to the right. I'm going to close this out with a poem that I read from my mother's eulogy. One final statement, and then I want to spend the next couple of minutes playing a melody that I've been working on over the past year. I was going to ask my dad to help me come up with the lyrics when I came out here for our visit this weekend, but I have decided that instead of writing the lyrics, I want us to sit here quietly as I play and let his contributions and the memories that we have of him become those silent lyrics. My dad never got to hear me play, and we never got to write a song together, so I want us to do that for him here today as a family. I read this poem at my mom's funeral because it was a testament to who she was and how she overcame the obstacles in her own life. I am very proud to stand here and be able to read the very same poem from my dad and how he grew to live his own. I pray that I can spend the rest of my life living up to and exceeding the same great examples that my parents have set for me, and someday have my son read this about my life. It's called The Rose That Grew from the Concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete, proving that nature's law is wrong? It learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems that by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from the concrete when it thought no one else cared. There's a Latin proverb I found shortly after Mom died. The life of the dead continues to breathe in the memories of the living. For most of you, your lives will go back to normal, and this day will become just another memory of ours that will go up on the shelf. Please honor my dad and help to keep his spirit alive by continuing to carry his torch of demonstrating the same courage and unconditional love to the strangers that we share this world with. I think I can speak for everyone by saying he made such a greater impact than any of us could have imagined throughout his life, and even more so in the remaining years of his life. By that, he has shown me through all of you, thank you, shown me through all of you that even after his death, regardless of our age, our history, that we still have reason to believe in our own capabilities. All of our individual mistakes combined in this room provide absolutely no challenge whatsoever to our capabilities of making this world a better place, one person at a time. I haven't put anybody to sleep, have I? Okay. In my dad's final and very appropriate words, y'all be good to each other. And now in my own, don't be afraid of showing the world what is in your heart. It could have a greater impact than you think. Thank you all again so much for being here with us, sharing your memories, your stories, your love and support with us all. As you can see, your impacts have already begun creating new ones in me. Let's keep that going. Now, for those of you who knew my dad, you would know that he had a cynical side to him. I've got a little bit of that in me too, and unless you were my dad, you didn't touch his instruments, you didn't touch his tools, you didn't go into his studio unless he was in there giving you the don't touch tour. Well, Dad, not only is this your guitar, and not only did I give myself a self-guided touch everything in sight tour, but I have played every instrument you've got all week long, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Thank you. I hope you guys like it. I have literally put the dog to sleep just about every day this week working on it. The song is called Where Words Fail, Music Speaks.
To all of you here, Jimmy was known as my very dear friend. Anytime he had contact on Facebook and referred to any of you, he addressed you as my very dear friend. And you were. Now, of the many things that you know and have heard that Jimmy had accomplished in his life, law enforcement officer, marksman with a gun, teacher of ESL wherever he went. And when I mean ESL, I mean English as a Southern language. Everywhere he went. A very notable Minnesota video of Jimmy bringing ESL. But one of the main things that Jimmy loved the entire time that I've known him was his passion for fishing. And the one thing that Jimmy did that I found odd was he caught as many fish as he could and take great joy in that, but never, ever ate a single fish. He always told me, I know where they swim. But each and every fish he caught, to him, was a prize fish. And like Jimmy, how he lived his life, he knew that he was doing God's work. And when he made a new friend, whether on Facebook, whether at church, whether through the process of marrying couples, families of those couples, families of those friends he met through work, through music, through church, through Heritage Springs, all those friends he made in the waves of life, he caught and captured as his prize fish. Each and every one of you here who has been impacted by Jimmy McNamara are his prize fish. And he shares each and every one of you with each and every one else in this room. You are his very dear friends.
I loved him so much. And normally when I said Jimmy, 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 I was shaking my head because of something he said. You all know that. You all know that Josh winks his little eye like his daddy too. I noticed that today. So I've got a couple things to read about Jimmy. God put this on my heart, this verse, and once it was given to me the third time I knew I had to say it. It's Matthew 25:34-40. Then the king will say to those on his right side, "Come, you have been called by my Father. Come into the holy nation that has been made for you before the world was made. For I was hungry, and you gave me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me water to drink. I was a stranger, and you gave me a room. I had no clothes, and you gave me clothes to wear. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you came to see me." Then those that are right with God will say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and give you a room? When did we see you had no clothes and we gave you clothes? And when did we see you sick or in prison and we came to you?" Then the king will say, "For sure, I tell you, because you did it to the one of the least of my brothers, you have done it to me." Is that not Jimmy? That is so Jimmy. And then the last it's a beautiful poem by Bonnie Moore. I was in the store looking at this beautiful oak tree. We have the picture in our house now. And I just stood there staring and reading this poem underneath it. And my best friend then, she bought it for me. And so now it sits there. I had read this and understood it. Ty had never read it. And he had an aha moment when he read it. And it was after Jimmy's death. And he said, that's the Jimmy tree. And that's what he calls it now. And it's called living life. Life is not a race, but indeed a journey. Be honest, work hard, be choosy. Say thank you, I love you, and great job to someone each day. Go to church, take time for prayer. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh. Let your handshake mean more than pen and paper. Love your life and what you've been given. It is not accidental. Search for your purpose and do it as best you can. Dreaming does matter. It allows you to become that which you aspire to be. Laugh often, appreciate the little things in life and enjoy them. Some of the best things really are free. Do not worry, less wrinkles are more becoming. Forgive, it frees the soul. Take time for yourself, plan for longevity. Recognize the special people you've been blessed to know. Live for today, enjoy the moment. Jimmy did that. And I want to know that every one of you, because I know you wouldn't be here if you didn't love him, carry on what he did. You don't have to have money to do what Jimmy did. If it's giving prayer to somebody, I've seen him in a restaurant ask somebody, do you need prayer, to the waitress, and most of them said sure. And he prayed for him, and they held his hand while we prayed together. That's Jimmy. Carry that forward. Pay it forward just as he did. Love him. I love you, Jimmy. I love you.
And some of us have a past where we didn't know the Lord. And Jimmy was one of those, and I am too. But what I loved about Jimmy, he was like Paul in Philippians, where he said that he could forget that was behind him, and that he was able to press toward the prize in Christ Jesus. Jimmy Mack would say, you know, if God could save somebody like me, if God could use somebody like me, then God could use or save anybody. And he inspired me with his attitude. Well, most of the time. But, you know, he would use his past not as a trophy or something to look back on, but to encourage others and to glorify God. And I appreciated that. He was a man that took all of his gifts and his talents and he used them for the kingdom. And today that we can honestly say that Jimmy Mack has taken hold of that for which God has called him, heavenward in Christ Jesus. And I want to say to Jimmy, we're going to join you soon, and we want to continue to press on. And Pastor Jim, I'm going to say this in his place. I know that you would sooner be a Texan than to be an Oklahoma Sooner.
As I was sitting here at the very beginning of the service, and I noticed that this picture of Jimmy was standing right about here. And I'm thinking, we're going to be standing over there behind that picture talking about Jimmy. And even after he's gone to heaven, he's upstaging me. But thankfully, some of these men were very sensitive, and they moved that picture way over there. Then Lori got up and said everything that I had in my notes to say. So please forgive me as I give you a rehash. Some 9 years ago, Janie and I had dinner at the Cove Restaurant at the Lakes. At that time, it was owned and operated by Lynn Myers and her crew. And Jimmy and his Brazos River Band were entertaining that night on the dock. Lynn introduced us. And Lynn, I'm still trying to forgive you for that. I don't know why, but a few days later, while visiting with Lori, I told her about Jimmy and suggested that she go hear him. I don't know why, but she and a date and her children did. While there, Jimmy invited anybody that wanted to come up and sing with him, and I don't know why, but Lori did. About a year later, I got an email from Jimmy inviting me to Larry's Hideaway to be in the audience when he and the band recorded an album. I don't know why, but I suggested to Janie that she invite Lori to the recording session, and she did. At the last minute, Janie was unable to go, and Lori took a friend, and Jimmy again invited people up to sing with him. And I don't know why, but Lori raised her hand again. Afterwards, Jimmy asked for her phone number. I don't know why, but Lori gave it to him. Sometime later, Lori asked my advice about marrying Jimmy. I said, Lori, don't do it. Soon, she and Jimmy came to me and asked me to officiate their wedding ceremony. I don't know why, but I said I would. Isaiah 55:9 says, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. This is one we just did. After their wedding, much like the afterburners on the Batmobile, Jimmy turned up his love and worked for God and touched so many lives in the next 7 years. Jimmy and Lori were fit together like a hand in glove. To see the two of them minister together was quite a blessing. They were such a balance to each other. Lori, the out front one out there in your face, I'm going to make you like me, and Jimmy trying to hold her back and calm her down. My consequences for getting all this so wrong? Jimmy loved to tell people that I told Lori not to marry him. And he loved to tell me that I never told him about how Lori really was before they got married. Jimmy would want me to say this, and I know it's not really appropriate at a memorial service, but there's been so many inappropriate things already said. The Grove Wedding and Event Center out in the northwest part of town is the best wedding and event center in all the Las Vegas Valley. And his Grove family is on the back 2 rows over here to my left. And don't read too much into that. They're not back there because they're ashamed of Jimmy. They're back there because most of them have to leave before this is over to go do weddings and take care of the Grove. I had a poem that I was going to read, but because time is so short and there's so many that want to speak, I'm just going to leave it with this. Jimmy, I'm not sad you're gone. I just wish we were all with you.
Thanks, Phil.
This was written by my Aunt Susie. She's my dad's sister. Family of 5. Susie, Steve, Kathy, Dad. What was that, 4? John, thank you. Yeah. Might be a reason for that. So this is from Susie. I want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate my brother's life. I'm sure if you were to tell me your names, I would recognize many of them from his Facebook post. I'm Jim's youngest sister, Susan, and if he was here right now, he'd tell you I'm also his favorite. We've all got McNamara in us. But now you'll just have to take my word for it. Many of you have been touched by my brother's loving heart in one way or another, and it's that thread that bonds me to those of you whom I've never met. You see, until now, I was blessed to always know that love is a part of my family life. Imperfect, yes, like all families. But like I told Lori earlier this week, I've never known my life not having Jimmy there. Like many of us who have come to know Christ, Jim struggled through many years fighting himself and the world before accepting Christ and allowing him to be the Lord of his life. Since his life-changing transformation, Jimmy was not shy in sharing and demonstrating his faith and telling anyone who would listen to him about God's love for us all. He told me many times he was so humbled to be loved in such a way, and he wanted everyone to know such joy and love. I believe that a person is forgiven. I believe that a person who is forgiven much, loves much, and therefore sharing God's love became his mantra, so to speak, and he lived that mission. She can't type very good. I know he would be greatly humbled and honored if each of you took away from your relationship with him this very message. He would challenge each of you to abandon yourselves to Christ. allow ourselves to know perfect love and joy in Him. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control. Love is mentioned first because once you experience the unconditional love of Christ, all the rest becomes attainable. Lori, Jim loved you with the love he found in Christ. And he was blessed by God to have been equally yoked to receive that love in return. That yoke thing was just something my dad used to always say. It was one of those annoying cliches. My family has grieved tremendously this week, but I have been able to praise God during this time as well. Many of Jim's songs this week have really spoken to my heart. I know I will see my brother again one day, and we all as believers will too. I am not without hope, and although I am heartbroken for having lost him too soon, I rejoiced in knowing that it's not forever. Thank you.
I knew him as Mac because I don't know how to read. We met on Facebook. I was giving somebody a hard time on Facebook, and all of a sudden, this guy started joining in. And what I realized was he was almost as funny as I was. And he said some of the most inappropriate things, and I loved him right away. We even went so far as to create our own Facebook page. We called it the Short Bus Tour because we felt that was appropriate. Mac and I would go out of our way to find a thread, harmless, wonderful, thoughtful thread, and completely destroy it. I live in Elko, which for those of you who are not familiar with Nevada is up in the northeastern part of the state. For those of you from Las Vegas, it is another part of the state. So I don't get down this way much. But the last time that I was here, we had some time, Mac and I together. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, Mac, I got no agenda. What do you want to do? He says, well, I need to buy some fishing hooks. So we need to go to the Bass Pro Shop. And I sort of suggested the idea of going to the Bass Pro Shop to buy fishing hooks would be like going to Costco to buy a stick of gum. But I also knew that there was something else that Mac needed to do. And we don't have Bass Pro Shop where I'm from, so anytime I could go, that would be okay. But it just seemed so perfect this time in this silly store, just a perfect analogy of what Mac was all about. He would find the most ridiculous things, tell me to put them on, and take a picture. And I'd do it, knowing full well that it would immediately go to Facebook. So we were having fun. We were just doing all kinds of goofy things. But we were down in one section, and there was a woman there, and Mac started talking to her, and she wanted him to hold a shirt up against him because she was reminded of someone that she was trying to buy this shirt for and would like to see if it would look okay. Well, Mac, I mean, he would have perfectly been willing to put the shirt on, you know, right there in the middle of the store. But we noticed something about this gal. This gal she had looked like she'd just come out of the hospital. She had some sort of a walker. She had actually still had some tubes that were in her. And we started talking with her. And Mac asked her, he says, are you okay? And she explained her situation and that she was out for, they let her out of the hospital for a little while, but she had to go back in. She's not from Las Vegas. She's going to be returning home soon, but she wanted to pick up a few things. And Mac asked her, he said, well, do you happen to go to church? And the gal smiled, and she said, yes. And he said, okay, are you saved? And she said, yes. And she began to tell us about her love of Jesus. And Mac, in his typical sort of style, his evangelistic style is that of a game show host. because he basically sat there and he smacks me on the chest and he says, do you know what he and I do? And it's like this girl she doesn't even know our names, for crying out loud. And so she was great. She took a couple of guesses. She's a used car salesman, and she nailed you. She nailed you. And he said, no, we're preachers. And he says, I am just so happy to hear that you have a relationship with Jesus, because Jesus is the most important person in my life. And I love to talk to people about him and about what he's done in my life. And I love, sister, to see the look on your face when you talk about your Savior as well. And we prayed for that gal. And she went about her business and we went about our fun. And as we were walking out of the Bass Pro Shop, we were talking about her particular situation, and we prayed a little bit more for her. And there was this really nice bass boat out in front of the store. And Max saw the sign in front of it that says, please do not climb on the bass boat. And I told you about my reading problem. I didn't see the sign. So he's looking at this boat. He says, I wonder how far this well goes in. He says, Bill, climb up there, because, my back is sore. I can't do that myself. And I did. And immediately, Max starts calling for security. This guy's climbing up on the bass boat. He's climbing up on the bass boat. And that's just who he is, or who he was. And when Ty called and told me that Mac was gone, shock is the word that just seems to run around. And it just was, because I just had the opportunity. I had taken a little sabbatical from Facebook, and so he and I took to Skyping pretty regularly, and I had just talked to him. And it was just such a shock. And I just knew from that very moment, I had to be here today. First of all, because I love the man so much. But second of all, because I know that if I hadn't come, he would haunt me for the rest of my life. I have never feared for heaven before, but J.D. Smith from SOS Radio posted on Facebook, he says, I can just picture Mac running around heaven right now trying to tase all the Old Testament saints. And I told J.D., I said, I'm glad I'm not the only one in the world that is really concerned about what's happening in heaven right now. And then there was this awful thought. Mac knows where my mansion is. I just know when I get to heaven, he will have already toilet papered the place.
About 6 years ago, I had signed up to volunteer over at Heritage Springs and wasn't sure what the Lord was doing there. But it happened to be one of the best decisions that I made, because that's where I got a chance to meet Jimmy McNamara, who I later started to address at and affectionately call Brother Jimmy. I wasn't sure how he was going to take that, because hardly anybody in the church today calls anybody brother as a title. But what I seem to find out over the years is that he embraced it. He was my big brother. And I can't remember a time when I needed him that he would tell me no, or I was too busy, or I just can't do it right now. Every time I needed him, he was there. And I remember sharing with him a couple years back that I felt a tug on my heart to go back to California and to see what the Lord has for me there. And unfortunately, it took me about a couple of years before I actually left. And the first time I told him that I was leaving, we gathered around Heritage Springs, and he wanted to do what we call a pray out, So it's a custom that we in the church do when somebody leaves to go and do ministry, that you would pray him out. And the first day he said, the first time he did that, he put his hand on me and he started to cry a little bit and he said, I'm sure going to miss you, brother. But I still stuck around. A few months later, it was suggested that he was going to pray me out again. And when he found that out, he threw his hands up in the air, shook his head, and he was like, well, I guess it didn't work the first time, so we're going to do it again. The last time, just earlier this year, when I actually did leave, Lori suggested that he pray me out. And I saw him roll his eyes, and he shook his head, and he prayed for me. And as I can hear him say, I can hear him pray, and as soon as he said, in Jesus' name, I turned around, and he looked me square in the eye, and he said, now get on out of here. You know, it's funny because that look that he had is the same thing on this picture that he has to the left of me. And I know Phil is glad that they moved that picture over there, but when they moved that picture there, it was right in front of me. And it just reminded me of Brother Jimmy saying, get on out of here, you know. But I am glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about Brother Jimmy because he was such a great support to me. He was such a great encouragement to me. I posted on my Facebook the day that the Lord took him home that I don't know where I'd be today if it hadn't been for Lori and Jimmy in my life. Constant encouragement. If there's such a thing as a promoter for someone in ministry, Brother Jimmy would have been mine. You know, he went out and he videotaped some of the messages that we did at Heritage Springs. He helped me format my testimony brochure, which I spread out here in Vegas, and I still do today in L.A. I mean, I remember one time when I had that custom trike that we were riding around and doing some ministry around here. I mean, before he even got here to Vegas, he knew everything about the motor. He knew everything about all of his accessories. He even told me what we were going to do with it. You know, he told people, yeah, we're going to go ride around and we're going to tell people about Jesus. And I sat there and I was thinking, oh, is that what we're going to do with it? And we did. You know, I really loved the fact that God gave me an opportunity to serve alongside Brother Jimmy. He gave me the opportunity to serve alongside with him on the motorcycle ministry. We even had the opportunity to ride for Save Child Trafficking Now one year. We did a lot of things downtown, but I know the one thing that really captured his heart was Heritage Springs. And I know that for many people, you know, it seems like it was just a ministry, it was just a service that we were doing there. But, you know, I remember it was about a good month or so ago. He had called me, and he usually keeps me updated and how things are going and everything. And he had said, you know, Dan, pray for this person and that for that person, and this is what's happening. And he mentioned somebody else that I didn't recognize the name. And I said, who is that again? And he says, well, you know, he said that they really didn't come to services, but Lori and I would go and visit them because they'd be back in the cafeteria, and you'd never see them, you know, in the services. But we went back there and we used to talk to them. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it just dawned on me. The Heritage Springs was more than just about doing a service or you know, preaching the word. It was about him pouring his life into others. And I think that's what we can honestly say about Brother Jimmy today, is that he honestly and he genuinely poured his life into ours. There's a little bit of him in each and every one of us, and I can't help but to think that as we talk about him and as we celebrate him, how much more we carry with him as we leave here today. He almost got me to saying y'all one time, and I had to go back and pray about that, you know. I really did. Going around Los Angeles with a Filipino saying y'all, that doesn't seem to look right. But that's what he left with me, you know. Out of all the people that I've ran across in this world and in this life, I think Brother Jimmy's the one that I miss the most. He really is. I can't seem to think of a time where he would say anything negative or you know, about someone he loved and has someone he poured his life into. He used to call me and refer to me as a modern day Paul. I don't know if I can live up to that, but I sure love the encouragement. I sure miss that encouragement. And I'm going to miss Brother Jimmy very much.
This is actually John Morgan, President Bush impersonator that Jimmy met when we brought John here, and you guys become good friends, and you came all the way out from Orlando, and we appreciate that, John, so thank you.
It's good to see you. No. Kathy, would you stand up and let everybody acknowledge you as well? This is my wife, Kathy. Thank you. You know, the first time I met Jimmy, I had the privilege of ministering here at VBS, and he volunteered instantly to be one of my Secret Service agents. And each and every time I appeared in Las Vegas for any kind of, I would try to sneak in. Somehow he'd find out. And he said, John, I want to be one of your Secret Service agents. And all I can say is Jimmy is very easily amused. You know? It didn't take much for him to be fascinated and to just have boy-like joy on his face. And Kathy and I did become very dear friends of Jimmy and Lori, and hung out with them all the time when we were in town. And they would escort us. They would show up at the airport, and Jimmy would be holding a sign, Mr. President, right? And he would have told everybody around, y'all know George Bush is coming. You know, and I always travel in a suit because I'm always afraid my suit will get left in Albuquerque, you know, with my luggage, and I will have to make yet another trip to buy a suit. But the thing that I am so fascinated with about Jimmy, and I think we can all grasp it, is as I look at this picture of Jimmy and the look on his face, okay, that's that boyish, easily amused, fascinated and amazed, I'm seeing Jesus for the first time. Look on his face. And I can just imagine that's the kind of stare, that kind of just amazed look that he has, even still, or had when he first woke up. He was in his living room, and then there's the face of Christ, my Savior, who I've lived for all these years. And I love, dude, how you live with a boyhood, a childlike simplicity. Nothing complex, nothing complicated. You need a motorcycle? Bam. Done. We'll figure out how I'm going to pay for it later. You know, there's a scripture also in Matthew chapter 5, I believe, that says, and this is a pun, but it's not meant to be, don't hide your light under a bushel. And, you know, Jimmy never did. He was like all out there. He wasn't one of those people who would allow his faith to be, you know, inside the four walls of the church. And then when you get outside the church, you don't talk about Christ. He was who he is 24/7. He was authentic. He is the genuine article. And so if I could leave you guys with anything that Kathy and I have learned from Jimmy and Lori and their kids, especially you, Jude, you're freaking me out. It's like a little Jimmy up here, isn't it? First time I talked to you on the phone, I just went, because it was just too weird. So good luck living. And you know, we've said this isn't a roast, and it is anyway, but I know Jimmy would want each and every one of you to hear today, there is a roast. For those that don't know Jesus Christ, there will be eternal punishment. And God so loves the world that he gave his only begotten Son so that whoever believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. If you're here today and you don't know him, don't leave without him. God bless you.
Some of y'all, if you don't know us from out of town, I'm Terry, and this is Terry. I'm Marita, and our daughter China down there, she was going to come up with us, but she didn't come. one of Jimmy's last posts on Facebook I saw, he said, "I love some of them greens." I know he wasn't talking about vegetables. And we love him too. We miss him very, very much. Jimmy Mack was an extraordinary man. I wish I got to know him more about his testimony from him, his words, when his walk with God became strong. He touched our lives in so many ways, Terry's and mine and China's. We spoke the same language. He's from Texas, a musician, a man of God, a preacher. And to me, Jimmy was like a brother, a father, and a mentor. Jimmy was very giving. He saw what people needed, and he gave it to them. His walk with God was true, and it was more true than I've seen anyone's walk with God before. And I say that because I've known a lot of people that passed on in my family, and they were God-fearing, Jesus-loving people. But this is the first time in my life that I know somebody went to heaven, and I can see him sitting there and laughing at us. "Why are you crying? Look where I am." I know Jimmy is in heaven. His walk with God was more true than I've seen anyone's. Like I said, he was an honest man. He was forthright, witty, loving, and kind. Terry met Jimmy in church. We sat right behind them, Lori and Jimmy. And Jimmy reached out to Terry immediately, shook his hand, and they became close friends very quickly. They spent a lot of time together. Terry was with Jimmy the last 2 days before God took him home. Terry and Jimmy shared their lives together, their stories equally, Terry to Jimmy and Jimmy to Terry. They shared their secrets and their dreams. And I know Jimmy Mack touched everyone's lives, and we all have our memories and our moments with him, but I will tell you, Jimmy Mack will live on forever, always in our home and in our hearts. It's a great loss for us, especially my husband. He lost his best friend, his accountability partner, his brother, and his brother in Christ. Jimmy McNamara, pastor, husband, friend, and bigger than life.
I had to bring Jimmy along with me because this podium he made for our home, I said I wasn't going to cry, but I haven't done this in 7 years alone since Jimmy came to be with us at Heritage Springs. My name is Deborah, and I am the activities director over at Heritage Springs, the home of Jimmy's flock. Some 7 years ago, 2 of my ladies came to ask me if they could invite a pastor over to give them some comfort on Sundays and do some preaching. I said, okay, if that's what you need and that's what you want, I'll put him on our schedule. Well, little did I know that service would grow so fast and so big. And one thing was constant, and that was Jimmy Mack. He was always there. At first, I stayed back and watched all the goings and comings of these friendly folks, while praying all along that they wouldn't let my residents down. The letdown never came. In fact, Jimmy and his wife, Lori, became a large part of our family, along with the rest of, as Jimmy would say, y'all know who you are. This was not just the first Sunday services, but hospital visits, holiday parties, every holiday party, in fact. It wasn't a party without Jimmy and Lori, that's for sure. Friendship visits from Heritage, with all of you from VBF. And those dreaded celebrations of life programs. The last time I was with Jimmy was the day before he passed. And it was on that day that it was a dreaded day that he did a sermon for Johnny Tolley, of which he was dreading doing that one. But we counted 42 in all that we have shared the celebrations of their life. You may say Jimmy was on speed dial for us, and not once did he ever let us down. Over those 7 years, I have come to know and even love Jimmy, not just because of all he has done for us, but because of the man he was. He truly was a man of the cloth, a dedicated lover of God, and he shared all that love with us. You have to forgive me. Jimmy had a way of making you feel that you were his best friend, a special person in his life, and that was very comforting, just knowing you had a friend unconditionally. That was Jimmy's gift, and we will miss him very much every day. All of the residents at Heritage Springs are heartbroken, and they send their heartfelt condolences. They pray for all of you at Valley Bible, especially you, Lori. You're an amazing woman and a wonderful wife and a great friend to Heritage Springs and to me and my family. And I only wish that you find comfort in knowing that Jimmy is at the side for his reason of living in Jesus Christ. We pray that VBF will remain a part of our lives and continue to tend to our spiritual needs. 7 years is not long enough to know a man like Jimmy. But one thing is a fact. I am very, very grateful for those 7 years. And I thank you all for being a part of our family. God bless you all.
God sent his son. They called him Jesus. He came to love, heal, and forgive. He bled and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all the fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future. Life